Good afternoon. Welcome faculty, staff, students, and guests. Thank you all so much for being here to experience with us the official launching of CEWiT, the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology here at Indiana University. My name is Maureen Biggers. I have, along with a small team, have been with the idea of CEWiT since it's been a seed, and I'm pleased to be and honored to be serving right now as the CEWiT Interim Director. This is indeed a special occasion for us, and we're all very excited to share this time with you today. It's my honor and pleasure now to introduce IU's First Lady and Chair of CEWiT Advisory Council, Laurie McRobbie. Laurie brings a wealth of experience to her role as IU's First Lady. A technologist in higher education for more than 25 years, she has served in numerous management and executive positions at the University of Michigan. As an executive director with Internet 2, she contributed substantially to building the Internet 2 community and its governance. Laurie's work at Indiana University revolves around women's philanthropy and the applications of technology in the nonprofit sector. She's the founding honorary chair of the Women's Philanthropy Council at the Indiana University Foundation, IUF, and she serves as senior advisor to the IUF president on university-wide programs and issues in women's philanthropy. She also holds an adjunct appointment in the IU School of Informatics and Computing. Laurie co-founded the CERVIT Service Learning Clinic that operates out of the School of Informatics and Computing, and with collaborating partners from SPIA and Kelly. CERVIT puts student-led teams into Bloomington area nonprofit organizations to provide information technology services that are badly needed. Most recently, Laurie has played a crucial role in the development of the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology. IU's First Lady serves on numerous community boards, including Middle Way House, a national model program addressing domestic violence, and the Bloomington Academy of Science and Entrepreneurship. She received her bachelor's degree in history with honors and high distinction from the University of Michigan, where she also helped to establish a major in women's studies. And she's currently enrolled in the Executive MA program in Philanthropic Studies at the IU Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. Please join me in welcoming Laurie McRobbie.
Thank you, Maureen. It is fantastic to be up here today at the official launch of the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology. Today marks a real milestone for Indiana University and particularly for IU Bloomington in our efforts to address a stubbornly persistent problem, the gender gap in computing, information technology, and other tech-related fields. I got my own start in computing in the early 1980s, and back then, women were underrepresented in most of the professions and in many science and technical disciplines. We set about trying to change that, and none of us back then realized that we would still be at it in the 21st century. We do have some advantages this time around, however. Many approaches have been tried, some successful and some not, but we learned from those. Lots of data have been collected and studies published, and we've progressed in our thinking about why it's so important to keep working towards parity rather than succumbing to Larry Summers-like conclusions that the current situation is somehow biologically ordained. The truth is that we can close the gender gap with what are often simple things, and it's imperative that we do so. There are three big reasons: equity, employment, and excellence. The equity argument is pretty basic. Jobs in the tech sector pay well, and the salary gap between men and women is smaller than it is in most other sectors. Women should have access to good computing jobs just as men do. The employment argument is based on forecasts that nearly 1.5 million IT jobs will be available over the next decade, and up to 2/3 of these may go unfilled because we aren't producing enough qualified applicants. Women represent a huge, relatively untapped pool of talent. But the excellence argument may be the most important. It's about the health of the tech sector itself. Research shows that groups with greater diversity solve complex problems better and faster than do homogeneous groups, and that companies with the highest representation of women on their management teams have a significantly higher return on investment than do those with few or no women. We need a diverse workforce, creating the very best solutions for our globally connected, interdependent 21st century world. This is where CEWiT comes in. The center is designed as a kind of Venn diagram, an intersecting set of communities exponentially creating positive change for everyone by encouraging, supporting, linking, and celebrating women in technology. CEWiT comprises 3 alliances for faculty, staff, and students. The Student Alliance, Women Empowering Success in Technology, or WeSIT, has been very active already, sponsoring job talks, awareness campaigns for students about the vast opportunities available to them, sponsoring non-credit programming classes where they earn e-badges, professional development programs for PhD women, social events, and more. You're going to hear more from WeSIT representatives a little later this afternoon. The Staff Alliance is a university-wide group called CEWiT, Women in Technology. CEWiT was formed before CEWiT planning began, and we joined forces early on. CEWiT has been organizing monthly leadership talks for staff, as well as networking social events and mentoring activities. The Faculty Alliance has been hosting a series of presentations in a social context called CEWiT Salons, which feature tech-related research by women faculty at IUB. And today, it's my pleasure to share a new initiative that will be piloted beginning this semester called CEWiT Circles. In line with the center's theme of excellence, the CEWiT Faculty Alliance will be informed by best practices developed by institutions funded over the last 10 years by the NSF Advance program, which supports the success, retention, community development, and advancement of women faculty. Common to most advanced campuses are mentoring programs in some form, including small groups and short-term speed mentoring. It is also a research area of one of our Alliance team members. We are launching CEWiT Circles as a model way to informally connect faculty across disciplines and ranks to share issues, ideas, experiences, and stories over time. We believe the circles have potential to not only promote the development of meaningful connections and intelligent discussions, but can inform future directions for the Alliance and its programs and initiatives. We are excited to extend an invitation to all interested faculty women to participate in a circle, and you'll receive more information about this very soon. Today marks an end of a kind, and of course it marks a beginning. It's the end of about 1.5 years of preliminaries, during which time we've been talking and listening, analyzing data and trends, planning and experimenting. We are at this point because of a lot of hard work, creativity, dedication, persistence, and insistence on the part of many who are here today. I want to thank Maureen Biggers, Ann Massey, Beth Playley, Julianne Martin, and Jenny Hertel, who in formal and informal ways have made CEWiT a reality. I want to thank all of the people who have founded and are participating in the alliances. They are the heart and soul of what we're doing. I also want to thank the members of the CEWiT Advisory Council, those who participated on the founding council, and the current members who are already working on CEWiT's first strategic plan. And of course, I want to thank our partners and supporters, the UIT statewide IT conference, Symantec, the College of Arts and Sciences Themester program, the Women's Philanthropy Council of Indiana University. And last, but far, far from least, I want to thank Provost Laurie Robel, without whose steadfast support and encouragement we would not be here today. When Lauren learned about the planning efforts to create CEWiT, she put the force and the funding of the campus behind it. This support has allowed us to grow quickly and to be unreservedly ambitious with our goals. In the 9 or so months since she became provost, Lauren has facilitated key components of one of the largest academic transformations in IU Bloomington's history, implementing the recommendations of the new Academic Directions Report, which called for several new schools and interdisciplinary programs, including global, online, and student success initiatives. While she has been bringing these plans to fruition, Provost Robel has also brought new focus to certain areas of the campus. And one of the goals that she articulated when she became provost was to substantially increase opportunities and support for women in science and technology. She actually went so far as to create her own unique brand for this. At IU Bloomington, we have STEM rather than STEM: science, technology, informatics, and math. Among the initiatives Provost Robel has begun in this area is a professional development fund that has already reached more than 100 faculty women, and a residential living learning community for undergraduate women studying in the STEM areas, which is now under the CEWiT umbrella. We could not ask for more enthusiastic leadership when it comes to the success of women at Indiana University. Please join me in welcoming Provost Lauren Robel.
Well, I can't believe we're at this day. It seems like just yesterday we were sitting around a conference table in my office, and Laurie McRobbie was articulating a dream, and that dream has, in record time, become this reality. The energy and the passion and the creativity and the imagination, the dedication that you have put into this, Laurie, are just astonishing, and they're inspirational for all of us on the campus, so thank you so much. There are any number of people who deserve thanks in thinking about how we got to this day. Obviously, Maureen Biggers, who has taken on this important role right at the beginning of CEWiT and has given it substance and direction. Beth Paley and Ann Massey, who were there at the creation and whose support and energy have been just inspirational for the effort. And I can't say enough wonderful things about the leadership of Dean Bobby Schnabel, whose commitment to gender equity in this area is a matter of long-standing record and incredible efficacy. So we have a great team. Julianne Martin and Jenny Hertel in my office also deserve a great deal of thanks for the effort they have put into pulling off today's launch, but also for the effort that they put into, Julianne in particular, the residential floor, which started out as a residential, not even a floor really, and grew by leaps and bounds in just no time as a result of her steady efforts. The formation of CEWiT has been a model for interdisciplinary collaboration. In addition to campus-level support, CEWiT has partnered with the College of Arts and Sciences, the Kelley School of Business, of course the School of Informatics and Computing, University Information Technology Services, and the Women's Philanthropy Council. So this has taken a lot of partners to get going, but they were partners who were ready to go. In its short life, the center has already attracted more than 200 members who are faculty, students, and staff from throughout the campus. And it's this inclusive approach that makes this group so powerful. CEWiT recognizes that no matter what field you're in, you need technology. Your field needs smart, ambitious, and talented women who are adept at understanding and deploying technology. As Laurie mentioned, technology seems almost recession-proof. The Bureau of Labor Statistics recently released a report that said information technology is one of the few industries that was not affected by the recession. This is an area of high demand, high growth, and extraordinary potential, and women deserve to be at the table. One of my goals, as Laurie mentioned, when I became provost, was to assure that IU Bloomington continued to be a beacon for women in the science, technology, informatics, and math fields. And I have to say, I believe that signal is reaching our students. This year, the college database ranked IU Bloomington 11th in the nation for advancing women in STEM programs and 2nd in the Big Ten. And that's without an engineering school. So you know it says incredible things about what we're offering with our other letters. With today's launch, that beacon shines significantly brighter. We're making it known that women here will not only find excellent education, training, and career opportunities, but also a welcome and supportive community. It's very rare to see an effort that is this effectively inclusive, one that is not only interdisciplinary, but also cuts across all sectors of the campus to involve faculty, staff, students, and partners like the IU Foundation. This innovative approach is just one example of the transformative ideas IU women are bringing to technology. And I can't say enough about the dedication and enthusiasm of the women involved and men involved in this startup, if you will. Trust me, you want to get involved with these people. And they want to bring in every one of you and make sure you have access to a world of opportunity. So thank you for coming today. It is great to see the auditorium so full with supporters. We're delighted and honored to have Moira Gunn with us here today to speak, and I'll welcome Maureen back up to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. I would like to also mention that we can't find another place in this country that has a center like this. It's multidisciplinary and covers all of these layers of people, and we're very excited to be a national model. So with that being said, it's my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Moira Gunn is best known as host of TechNation and its regular segment BioTechNation, which are heard nationally on NPR's 24-hour program stream and the NPR channels of XM, Sirius, satellite, internet radio, among other venues. That's a mouthful. In college, she graduated in the first class of computer science majors and went on to earn a master's degree in computer science at Purdue University, where she also became the first woman to earn a PhD in mechanical engineering. A former NASA computer scientist and engineer, Dr. Gunn holds a software patent in human nutrition measurement systems. Her work in information systems extends from satellite image processing and climate models to robotic systems, financial systems, and the first Macintosh database. As Program Director of Information Systems at the University of San Francisco, USF, she expanded the MSIS degree to specialty areas including information security and biotechnology. She founded and today serves as the director of the Business of Biotechnology program in the School of Management at USF, which serves numerous degree programs across the university, including MBA, the JD MBA, MSIS, and the Professional Science Masters in Biotechnology. Her book, Welcome to BioTechNation, was cited as Best Biology Book of 2007 by the Library Journal. Adding to her engineering doctorate, Dr. Gunn received an honorary doctorate in science from Purdue University. Among her numerous awards is the 2011 National Public Service Award for her efforts in expanding the public understanding of science and engineering by the National Science Board. Dr. Gunn will speak with us today about life choices in a digitally connected world. Please help me welcome Dr. Gunn to the stage.
This is great. Hey, I'm so glad to be here. It's really wonderful, and I've been really impressed by how many people came up to me and said, I've listened to TechNation for years, or I just listened to one show, and could I ask you about that? So a frequent request I get, and I will honor it today, is to do the standard open to the show, and that's from San Francisco. I'm Moira Gunn, and this is TechNation. Now, I'm palpably, aware that engineering is not an official discipline here, but I wish that IU had $1 for every time they sit up in Purdue and say, we don't have a law school, we don't have a medical school, we don't have, it's like somebody ought to get together and just tear down the fence and let us all be whatever we can be. And one of the things that I think is important in engineering is that while there's an official topic of engineering, the truth is that anybody who builds is an engineer, and you just can't help it. I thought I came from a family of history and English majors till I found out my grandfather was a lifelong engineer. And when I told them I was going to engineering, they looked at me and said, well, Grandpa was one, maybe it's there. We're all engineers, and we have to kind of understand that, even though there's a sensitivity on official titles. Okay, now we have to get this to work. It wouldn't be right if we didn't have a technology glitch in here. There we go. So at this launch of the Indiana University Center of Excellence for Women in Technology, I'm really, really thrilled. I'm thrilled. Many times people say, well, it's so descriptive. It's like, yes, it's so descriptive. There's no question about what it's about. But what is technology? I think that's really important to understand. And we've always had a saying on TechNation, if God didn't make it, it's technology. And when you look around, you say, what is that? Well, language is technology. Humans came up with language. Everything's technology. I can assure you the color of my hair is technology. Anything that didn't exist in nature, this building, and so much of how we communicate, and all these things are things that we as humans built, and they all follow the rules and nature of technology. So I asked myself, why women in technology, and why excellence? Well, fully half the technology is utilized by women, just by count. And when you build any technology without the consideration of all stakeholders, it's flawed. So clearly, women have to be at the table, as do minorities, as do if we have people in Austin, Texas, designing igloos for the Inuit in Alaska, there will be problems. So we can work together, but we do have to work as a team and include all stakeholders. Women have absolutely been overlooked for years. I mean, I had to laugh. I was the first woman to get a PhD in ME from Purdue, which was in and I told them the floodgates are opening. Women are just going to be coming. And the next PhD in mechanical engineering from Purdue, who was a woman, was 17 years later. And then another one about 7 years later. We're doing much better now. Now our dean of engineering at Purdue is a woman. And it's like these things were not happening at the rate at which we expected. Thus, women must be included in all the design and building of technologies. But what about excellence? I usually say, people taking over and give a speech or talk to us about that. This I've really been mulling about, and I have to be truthful about that. One definition of excellence suggests we want women to be just as good as men at building these technologies. And it was like, that's not a very good goal. It's kind of, how do you get out of your seat for that? Okay, we'll try to be as good as you. We're trying to play catch up here. I don't get that. Doesn't really motivate me. I find this to be a very limited vision. And when any vision is limited, you really can't run through the line, as they say in track. You want to run through the line. You want to go on to something else. And so that's why I'm suggesting something different. Another definition of excellence asks, what can women bring to the building of technology which improves the technology for all? It's not just that you're at the table, so we got to ask you. It's not that you're just a stakeholder. What would the inclusion of women in technology, how could that be different for technology and for all of us? Well, men and women are different. When we get the people from life science to come over and talk to any of you who don't believe this, it's true, we are different. And what do women do differently than men? I think that's a question. That wasn't a question we could ask when I was going through and getting my PhD in mechanical engineering. We were in the feminist tradition, and we could do anything you could do, and this was equal, and we're going to share, and that kind of thing. And that worked really good until the second day I was pregnant. And I said, I was pregnant all day yesterday. Now it's your turn to be pregnant. You know, like, we have a problem. This is a problem. We can't live with this. And so I'm not really sure what this all means. So I'm going to introduce you to someone named Dr. Marion Cleaves Diamond. And she's absolutely fantastic. She's had 5 children. She is a neuroscientist, a longtime neuroscientist. She replaced Glenn Seaborg, a very famous Nobel laureate, as the head of Lawrence Hall of Science at Berkeley. And in her young career, she was one of the ones that dissected Albert Einstein's brain, I guess looking for information, you know, so that's another information sciences treat. She talks about creating the future. One book, which is not a new book, is Magic Trees of the Mind, how to nurture your child's intelligence, creativity, and healthy emotions from birth through adolescence. There used to be this thing, most men were writing the books about the brain. And they would come into my studio, and I'd say, okay, now what's the difference between a male, I've read your whole book, a male and a female brain. They go, not going there. No, not talking about it, no. Oh yeah, there's a difference. You're not going to get it on air. I don't need the grief to hear that, you know, we're just not equally good, and it's like, don't need it. And she said, actually, it's very different. And we have to understand that there are many different connections. There are more connections between the right and left brain on females than there are on males. And basically, if you put a brain in a lab dish, you've got a very good chance of deciding whether it came from a male or a female simply by interconnection. And there are many other tests for it, but we know it's female and male. So anytime you have any process, any technology, whatever you want to call it, built 2 different ways structurally, in sometimes different parts, different hormones, et cetera, obviously it's going to work differently. So we didn't know that 30, 40 years ago. We just didn't know. Neuroscience is coming on. The big bang of neuroscience is here, and we are just flying through that. So this was important. I want to also point out, for those of you who have children or are about to have children or someday may have, it's absolutely, this book is great because it takes boys and girls every way from, 1 month, 2 months, and it says, what is different about them? What definitely comes forward in each brain. They operate at a different pace. They do different things. They need to be encouraged in different ways. And so I always think of my girlfriend, and she decided that her son should have a doll because she had fraternal twins, so her daughter should have a doll. And so she gave a doll to each of them, and little Freya hugged the doll, and Spencer went, bang, bang, bang. She was like, no. So I said, don't give him a doll, give him an action figure. It's like, we just have to understand what this means. This describes this. And she was the one who told me, she said, look, you get into college, 18-year-olds, women, they've got judgment, but on average, judgment doesn't fill in the male brain until age 22. It doesn't connect to the rest of the brain until age 26. So wait a minute, would you ask your iPhone to do something for which you did not have the app? So some of you will have teenage sons someday and find yourself looking at them and saying, what were you thinking? And midway through that sentence, which is frequently asked, realize you don't have the app. So we begin to understand, that we are different, and we want to look at that. I must be going to the wrong place here. Okay. All right. Do we know what's happening? We froze up. There we go. Okay, so the science is clear. Women have a tendency to right brain activity over left brain activity. Right brains are where your pictures are processed, that type of thing. Left brain is letters, words. Oh, that's exciting. Letters, words, dark screens. No, that's in the right brain. And so we're talking about tendency of the, I wish I could remember that. Okay, here we go. This has gone. Well, let's just do Alt W. Hello. Oh, you know what? It was sitting up here. I bet it went half to sleep. Okay. Okay, well, we're there. Actually, I bet that's big enough for everybody anyway. What do you think? We have. We'll do that. We'll do it this way unless anyone wants me to change. So we have a tendency to right brain versus left brain. Left brains are alphabets, words, math, that type of thing. And if we look at the history of engineering, when I went into engineering, it was a traditional male skill, culture, and science. The art and science had to do with left brains. So as you're a woman walking in the door, you have to be sufficiently good at the left brain activity to pass the courses. We're talking now culture change. Would you? That would be great. I would continue talking, but I don't have a story. And the next one? Oh, maybe that's what I did. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. Look at all these pictures. Who's happy and who's sad? It's kind of interesting. If you look at anything long enough, you go, oh, you're happy. Oh, maybe you're not so happy. Where are you sad? What is that? How does that work? And so Dr. Diamond told me about and this I quoted from her book, but she told me about it in the interview. It said, when asked to decide whether photographs showed faces with happy expressions or sad ones, males were good at recognizing sadness on men's faces, but not as adept at telling when a woman was downhearted, which was a nice way of saying they had no idea about the women. None. Okay. So that's kind of interesting, as we look at it. Females, on the other hand, were equally adept at spotting joy or sadness in either sex, and their brains did it with less effort. So if you're going into a big negotiation and you see the whole other side of the room, and you're a guy, and there are females on the other side of the room, even if there are guys on the other side of the room, you want a female standing next to you saying, well, what do you think? Are they buying our act? Aren't they buying our act? If you're a female and you're looking around the room and you're a member of a team and you realize this guy over here is not buying it, but he's got a happy look on his face. He's not. We have many kinds of studies going on from there about the female perception of men and women, in fact, whether they are happy or sad, or there are other illusions here that we can look at. But the whole idea of part of building things is teams and project management and management. Women are highly adept at this. So what I'm suggesting in terms of a Center for Women, Excellence in Women in Technology, is to really continue as one of its efforts, is to find those things that women actually have a differential from men. Women are good at, that contribute to the whole. And that's part of what we reinforce with women. At the same time, what do innovators, and I'm saying innovators that we recognize in technology, what do they have in common? And they're all here. They're all pretty. I don't see any women there. But we have Larry and Sergey, of course, for Google, Zuckerberg with Facebook, Jeff Bezos with Amazon, the Yahoo boys, the Twitter boys, and what do they have in common that's relevant to women? You know, and I think that this is a really important question because these are people that are actually on the forefront. They actually did it. They got out there. They're not the only people who did it. Not everybody was successful, but these are the people that got out there. And the one thing that I came up with, because I've talked to all these people, is they were not afraid to build something that had never been built before. Now that may sound like, well, what, don't we kind of do this? Well, you know, that's the gift of ever working at NASA. Many gifts of working at NASA, but that's one of them. And you know, if it's been built before, NASA doesn't build it. Somebody else builds it, or you're going to build a lot of them. And it gives you a whole different perspective that I'm going to build something nobody has done before. So to ask someone to be innovative while they're saying, well, what are the best practices? In Silicon Valley, nobody ever says, what are best practices? Because that means you're doing something that a whole bunch of people have done and figured out how to do. They say, no, how do we do this? Nobody's ever done it. How do we do it? And we're unafraid to go forward. So instilling that confidence and that mindset in building things that haven't been done before is especially important. So what can or do women build in terms of some of these things that we know about women? One of the people I'd like to introduce you to is Dr. Leah Jamieson, who's Dean of Engineering at Purdue University. And she founded many years ago, as an assistant professor, EPICS, Engineering Projects and Community Service. And you do have a similar program that you go out and do in community service. And she did it because she was asked to figure out how do we get more females into engineering there. Now it's grown to 20+ engineering disciplines at 20 universities. She's a member of the National Academy of Engineering. And I can tell you, as an assistant professor, when she was doing this, she was kind of laughed at. I mean, what difference does it make, you know? Hello? Oh, we're back. That's good. We're back. And so she had, it was like, what is this about? And what about the female? There weren't a lot of females running around anyway. But I have to tell you that the females didn't just look at the technology and the science that you need to get into and the math that you need to get through engineering. They wanted to know what you could do with it. And when it was something that was socially compelling, they'd say, I really want to do this. And if to do this, I have to get through all this, I'll do it. And so it was extremely successful, certainly at Purdue, 20+ engineering disciplines at Purdue it is in, and now it's at 20 universities nationally. It may even be more at this point. But the whole point is that we have already figured out, all of us here have figured out, that we have to get women into these things by what moves them. You know, what moves them. And when you start out, but there's an interesting lesson here. When she started out doing it, she wasn't received well. She wasn't received with, they said, well, we don't know if that's going to be, and what difference does it make? It made a lot of difference. And so for all of these people who are going to do something the first time, it's not just the risk of nobody's done it before and how do you do it. It's also the risk of acceptance. You have to be able to see your abilities, see the opportunity, and not worry about whether you're accepted or not. That's different than being funded. You could be funded and might get, but are you accepted? And that's important. Okay. I'm ready. Oh, there we go. Did we just do that one? Here we go. Now, I wanted to talk about somebody who many of you have heard of. And I wanted to take an example of someone who was building something that didn't exist before, using some technology, or if God didn't make it, it's technology. You don't have to have a piece of hardware or software to be technology. If man thought it up, it's technology. And this is someone who is motivated for different reasons. Yunus is well known as being the founder of the Grameen Bank. Yunus, of course, is from Bangladesh, a professor of economics PhD, and he had been teaching in London and decided to come back to Bangladesh because it was just so hard hit by the floods and economics, and it just was in a third of the country was ravaged every so often removed essentially there, massive poverty. And he took his PhD students into a little village, and they were looking at what they thought was a really good idea. They had women there running sewing machines and making baskets and making things, and they would buy the materials and then turn around and give them to the distributor and then get paid for it. And it's like, well, this is good. They're supporting themselves and their family. Well, then, of course, they got a little further into the conversation, and it turned out that they were paying off this sewing machine a little bit at a time, which cut into their profits. They were having to pay, because they didn't own the machine, they were told they had to pay more for the materials, and they got less for, it's like, so he was looking at this thing, this is crazy, you can't get ahead. And how much, in fact, do you owe? And I think it was like $1.50. He was like, no. He was like, what? You're being kept here for $1.50? So he sent one of his students out to go through the village, and he goes, come back, and how much to buy out the entire village? We'll take everybody out of debt. We'll give them we'll buy them the sewing machines or whatever the technology they needed. We'll get them ahead so that they can get ahead and start making more money. And the answer came back $42. I may be off by $5. I'm not off by much. And he said, this is crazy. The people who have created this economic system do not have the welfare of the people who are on the receiving end of it in mind. They're not only, well, they're giving them enough so that they have more than if they weren't participating, but they're not giving them enough so that they can get ahead, so that they can grow, so that they can be independent. And so, he bought out the village, and he started Grameen Bank. And then he started lending small amounts of money. And here's sort of an interesting part for men and women. First, he lent it to a whole lot of men, and a whole lot of the money didn't come back. That was not good. And then he lent it to women, and he's put it in writing, he said it to me, when you give money to a woman, she spends it on first feeding her children, and then health, and then to protect her children. So within just a few short years, they went from men all the way over to 99% women. And then they decided to develop a set of rules because a person could get in trouble with this. So then they developed something where they lend to groups of 5 women who know each other, and no more than 2 can have a loan out at one time. But they all work to get the loan paid down so someone else can get a loan, whether it's to get a digital phone, because you can actually then sell phone services to people coming by, whether it's to get a sewing machine, or you name it. And what happens then is that if someone has a payment due, or someone is trying to work a loan off, it's like, I'll take your children. Women do this all the time. I'll take your children. Don't worry. I'll cover this. I'll get this over here. Oh, let me do it. I'll start working with you. We'll have double the output and get more money in. So they started working in groups. In fact, he started letting the people who borrowed from the bank and successfully borrowed and paid back, they became shareholders. And in fact, they came up with what was called the 16 rules, at which point he said, I can't have any more than 16 rules. And the 16 rules said, you can't get money lent unless your children go to school. You can't get money lent unless you build a pit latrine, which is a form of technology, which is a very simple form of a toilet. But if you go to places like these places, you'll find that there are no facilities, and women would have to wait until dusk all day and then go out into the fields and come back. The freedom that a pit and a latrine permitted you in terms of where you could go, how you could deal with your children. It was just an enormous change. And so there's some 16 rules. So this went on and built up, and it completely changed the face of Bangladesh. This is technology. This is innovation. And it is not about getting an IPO. It's not about making the most money. And it's not about saying, am I an engineer or not an engineer? It's a question of what's in your heart and what are in your values. The result of this, of course, hello? The result of this, of course, maybe it'll come. I don't know what's the problem. Do you know what the problem? Oh, there it is. The is the Nobel Prize. Now, Nobel Prizes come basically with about $1 million. What's interesting here is Mohammed and the Grameen Bank, meaning all the shareholders, got the Nobel Prize. They got the Nobel Peace Prize. They didn't get the Nobel Prize in economics. They got the Nobel Prize for peace, which I think is really interesting in a lot of ways. But the point is that if you look at where war is, and war is rampant, their economic infrastructure has fallen apart. People are starving. They have no way to make money. They have no way to keep a government. They have none of these things. So if you want peace, you ensure that people have the basics and are able to thrive. They're able to get health care. They are able to eat. They're able to have family and pass it along. They're able to be safe. And so the result of this, of course, was the Nobel Peace Prize. An enormous effort, but someone who looked around him and said, what could we do differently? That's innovation. Now, I think it's really important to understand about information. We tend to look at the technology itself. But that's not exactly the story of technology, especially for women. Legal, social, and ethical impact of technology is always around women. We always start with the technology innovations. We think that. The technology innovations lead to ethics considerations on personal use, the impact on society, and finally the laws. Let's look at what that looks like, because you need to see yourself in there as to where your interests are. Innovations are two things. One is they are new technologies, but others are new uses for existing technologies. The people who build the technology can never predict how it will be used, ever. And we understand that especially over time. So those are the two. Those are innovations, and they crash like waves. They're happening all the time. They're happening as we speak, including on this campus. Ethics. Whenever we have new technologies arriving, humans use them. They don't use themselves. Even if they're out there automatically running, humans started them up and said go. So whenever you do that, you have individual ethical decisions at that point in time. Whenever a new technology gets into the hands of a new human, it has a new potential use that no one ever thought of, and nobody understood the potential ethical implications. Then from individual ethical decisions, we come down to society. We look at when the human impact of technologies. It's not okay for me to drive around in a guzzling car, putting out all this stuff into the atmosphere if it's actually going to hurt other people someplace. It's like we're beginning in the last 20 years to understand that, wait a minute, I don't just get to use it anywhere because it doesn't impact me, human impact of technologies, and then the social impact of multiple and collective uses of technologies. We can't open the paper in a day, even though I'm talking this digitally now, and find out what's the effect of social media on a teenage girl, or what has happened any place. So in the societal realm, once you have the innovation and people have made certain ethical decisions to use it in particular ways, we see the human impact and we see the social impact. And finally, we go to laws. A lot of people don't realize this, but laws are enacted in two different realms. One, for mandated technologies for the good of us all. And part of that might be seen as Obamacare. And I'll use my little pulpit here today to say, anybody who thinks that you can build in just a matter of months a website that 35 million people are going to log on to within 10 minutes of each other on complex questions nobody had, and the answer is, no, it's not free. You get to pay exactly how much you were paying before, but they're just not going to reject you. I mean, hello. Name me another instance of this in history. and it's all supposed to work. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about, not how technology works. The other part of the laws are laws prohibiting socially deemed negative uses of technology. You're not going to do that. You know, go to England, there are no guns. You know, anytime there's a socially deemed negative use of technology, nobody wants it. Human cloning, against the law. You know, so we're looking at that. So that's the cascade that's there. So once you understand that, people say, well, why can't we figure this out beforehand when we build the technology? Because it takes this cascade to figure out what's wrong and what's right. And yes, there's most of the technology and its uses in the middle. They're considered neutral by society. If society doesn't get excited, but you do, they're not going to make a law about it. So most technologies are free-floating out there. Their applications are free-floating out there. That's what we have. So what are the greatest challenges in a digitally connected world? We've had some doozies recently. Of course, we have Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, started in 2006, leaking all kinds of things, 20,000 State Department emails and memos, which nobody's actually completed reading yet. We're talking about all kinds of massive things in a world in which this man believes he's a journalist. If he couldn't read the 20,000 things he leaked, I hardly think that's journalism. It's like we have to understand what that means. Of course, it's about telling the truth and making sure it's correct. If you actually look at mainstream journalism versus social media, you'll find that mainstream journalists have to cite sources against the same old rules. Are they true? What is this? What is that? They have editors. They've got to check all these things. When mainstream journalistic sources quote social media, they quote opinion, that this opinion is relevant by a person in the social media or by a group in social media. When you go over to social media, about half the time, they quote mainstream sources for truth, and the other half the time, they don't quote anybody. So there you go. You know, it's like, whoa, what do we got here? Over 50% of people blogging and social media believe they're journalists, yet they have no code for checking what is your source, is it correct, what is the completeness, all the responsibilities that journalism has developed over these years. So this is the problem. This is a person who thinks he's doing good by telling the truth. One, they leaked 5 or 6 days before the election in a country in Africa. They leaked some reports on the economic status of one of the presidential candidates, swung the election. The polls went the other way. It's like, but were they true or weren't they true? They released a report in Deepwater Horizon saying, we don't know if this is true or not. Released it on the internet and got a response from BP saying, where did you get it? And that's when they said, oh, it must be true. You know, where did you get it? Well, if someone had made it up, what would have happened? Bad information would have gotten out there and people would have believed it. Huge in this world. Okay, I must be doing something wrong here. It likes it when you walk up. I don't know why that's. Let's go here. This is how you turn a 30-minute speech into a 2-hour one. Here we go. All right, Edward Snowden. Oh, Edward Snowed. That was it. Oh, whoops. A Freudian typo. Who knew? NSA leaks. Well, the National Security Agency is interesting because every math major will tell you more mathematicians are hired by the National Security Agency than any organization in the world. So that's why math people don't say, I don't know if I can get a job. I can get a job. Encryption as we know it is formed of something called elliptical curves. It's a lot of what it's built on. And the National Security Agency has been lobbying NIST, our National Institute for Standards and whatever that is, to use elliptical curves that are more easily constructed to have back doors so they can look at things. I mean, literally lobbying. So we're looking at the National Security Agency. And then we have Edward Snowden here, who was a systems administrator. So the question is here then, what are we looking at? I have a friend who's the CFO of a commercial bank. And she said, she couldn't believe that they didn't have systems in place, that this guy could just not take this information. And so I said, really? And I said, now, you're the CFO. Who would you go to get that system in place? And she said, the system administrator. So we have double entry bookkeeping, and we have different people doing things. Life is all set up here for an opportunity to not just do hard encryption on technology, but to figure out how we can make these systems so that there's always a double, triple check. And we know. These human systems, women are very good at. And this is this monitoring of 35 world leaders. Here's Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany. She doesn't like this. 35 leaders are spied on, and 34 went, oh. And she's like, hey, no way. We need trust. Spying among friends is never acceptable. Major fallout here. Severely shaken over spy claims. So you think what these people do don't have an ethical, social fallout? You're crazy. But what can you do? What will you do when faced with this? Can you create systems and can you create technologies and ways of looking at things that could change this? So where do we need better innovation? Well, we need trust, obviously. And that goes between, when you're in this realm, between the innovations hitting the ethics. A lot of room for challenges there. Social issues. Many, many social issues. You don't get that until we start using and creating technology used by the ethical decisions used in society, and finally laws, innovative programs. And so I'm just going to give you, women can bring a different set of values to innovation. And let me give you one example. This is Kim Popovich. She's the president and CEO of Genomic Health. She only has a business degree in business administration. She has a bachelor's degree in business administration. She became a pharmaceutical rep. And frankly, you know, I got to tell you, you know, that means you're probably blonde, thin, and cute. Sorry. That's who gets hired. And they go around showing doctors their pharmaceuticals. And then, of course, their information systems in the back end, and they can see that that it's going up. The sales are going up. Well, she ended up making her way through it. She became head of sales and marketing at Genentech. And now she's with Genomic Health. Genomic Health does informatics analysis of tumors from breast cancer that they matched with what women did 15, 20 years ago, and the chemo and radiation they used, and what the prognosis was. And because of that, they can look at the biomarkers and say, it's slow growing, it reacts to this chemo, or it doesn't, it's fast growing, pull out all the stops. It's huge. But had to be accepted. 4 or 5 years ago, they finally got acceptance, and you can literally see the trends. With the growth of this acceptance of this test, the use of chemo to treat breast cancer went down, and chemo is the standard for treating breast cancer. For every 100 women that receive chemo, how many benefit? 4. 4. Don't get me started. Oh, I have the stage. Okay. And yes. So what they did is they found that physicians were reluctant to treat. And they got to about 50% of the physicians, and then they just wouldn't like, hey, I just want to be safe. I want to treat. We don't care. We haven't done this. This is it. So they started a social media campaign, said, pass it on until every woman knows. So Kim had already been reviled as a publicly traded company because instead of having 5 to 7%, 5 to 8% in R&D, she put 27% in R&D. She said, there's not just breast cancer, there's ovarian cancer, there's prostate cancer. Go down the list. We have to put it back in there. We have to grow this company and cure these things. So what they did is they started a social media campaign. They funded YouTube, they funded Twitter, they funded Facebook. They gave the money away. They said, every test you have, every information you have, as long as it's valid, we will do it. And they did YouTube videos of people who were breast cancer survivors or going through it or at various stages in both English and Spanish. And they used the power of social media to take over. And what has happened? The use of the test, 'cause what happens when something like this, you get on the internet and you see this and you go into your doctor and say, well, I want this test. I want the test because I want the information. And now we're starting to see it grow and we're continuing to see chemo go down. Anyone who has known anybody who's taken chemo knows it shouldn't be wished on anyone. So this is the kind of thing that women can do. So I want to thank you very much for being here, and I want to take a few questions if we do this. Thanks. Okay, we have 2 microphones here, 1 and 2. Anybody have a question? Or I'll tell long stories from my youth. I'll take a few questions here. Oh, is somebody coming out for a question? Or are you leaving? Okay, we have some people coming up to the microphone. No, we don't. He's leaving. Come on. Laurie, ask a question. You don't have to get up. If you just ask me, I'll tell you. Oh, we have somebody? No, we don't. Oh, can you come down to the mic? Yeah, great, thanks.
So in your interpretation of male versus female based on neuroscience, I was concerned about controls in terms of plasticity, social adaptation. In other words, are we seeing some of this simply because of the way that we develop now rather than something that's really different? Do you understand the question?
I think I understand the question. One of the things that we're all really excited about now that we know a whole lot more about the brain and how it's developing is that we have a lot of neuroplasticity, we can change, we can develop. And one of the things that has been clear, for instance, at Purdue, is like one of the reasons that an old engineer, as we say, may be more valuable than a young engineer is that you say, oh, a young engineer has all the new technology. But over time, old engineers tend to develop, and I'm just going to say this very generally, they're developing intuition. They're developing, we find that people start to grow toward each other. They start to learn these things. They're not unlearnable, but we're talking about trends that are set in place. That, hey, we can take advantage of it. I can tell you the art and science of engineering, which sounds kind of funny, the art and science of engineering doesn't say, hey, you guys got to learn how to read faces. And I just thought I'd take one that was absolutely female and not male, working in teams. Females work in teams, and they work in teams much differently, leaderlessly. And they say, okay, great, we got to get everybody out to the car and we got to do all this. And they don't say, you're going to do this and you're going to do this. Very interesting. So I think that what we really want to see is that everyone has every skill. But we also want to understand what are all the skills, recognize them in ourselves when we bring it to the table, and respect it in others when we know we don't do it very well. I know some really, really great technologists who could not make a presentation to save their lives, and they know it. But let's talk about some of the ones we don't. So the point is I think we all want to become our best. Everybody bring it to the table with full confidence so that the art and science of building and of technology and how we build it develops over time. Yes?
Hi, my name is Catherine Finn. I'm an undergraduate student in technology. I worked in a technology consulting firm this summer, and we had an event centered around women feeling comfortable identifying with the word technologist, simply because it's such a large category. And do you have any advice for women to feel comfortable using such a large blanket word to describe themselves or to feel comfortable in this area?
Well, you know, naming things and perception is always really tricky thing, you know, but it's very real. And I mean, I've had a number of inane things said to me over the years. Oh, you have a PhD in mechanical engineering? That's even good for a guy. You know, that's a great example. Or I was on the Today Show, and I was like, you'd be our resident rocket scientist. And then he says, could you act a little stupid? It's like, fortunately, no. You know, what is this? You don't want to be, people see it, they want to be it. People feel it, they want to be it. If you start out with a name they're not feeling, that's a problem. I think one of the jobs of this center is to start coming up with new names, new perceptions. And sometimes you can change the perception of a name or identity. Sometimes you have to literally change the name. You know, in biotech we have therapeutic cloning. It's like, it's It's got nothing to do with cloning, but people are off to the races. We don't want that. It's like, no. Just think of another name. It was a technical name the science did. So I think that's it. But I think people, if there's any of that for women or anyone, that's a problem. And I think it's also a problem for their parents. Their parents don't want them to be that. It can really throw a spanner in the works. So that's what I say. I think that's part of the job. They'll all agree. And Maureen will agree that's part of the job that's going to be done here. Well, I wanted to leave you with one thing, is that and I think it bridges off this, in that people frequently think, oh, you're going to be a technologist. That's so boring. You're going to be at a desk all day in a cubicle. You're going to be working on these, and you're going to be working all the time, and, they're going to be slipping pizza slices under the door, if you have a door. It's like you're going to dress bad and smell, and just all kinds of stuff, they think. They tell you all kinds of things. And it can't possibly be exciting. And I want you to know it can be really exciting, sometimes unexpectedly exciting. I had built what's called a non-destructive testing system, where you build some technology, you shoot X-rays through it, or N-rays, whatever you have, and then you put it in an image processor in the visual spectrum, and you do a set of things so you can see what's on the inside. And we did everything from rocket motors for the booster rockets for the shuttle, up to ignition caps, up to Tomahawk missiles. It was a really big deal. So with the Tomahawk missiles, I was out at the U.S. Naval Ordnance Station in Indian Head, Maryland, and we had all these various, stations and bunkers, and it was really, and I was a little crazy. I was coming from California, where everybody's running, and every day at about 10 to 12, everybody would walk out to the car and drive out to the front of the base and spend an hour having lunch at the officers' club. Then we would walk out to the car, and we would drive back to the, and you're wasting an hour and a half here. So anyway, one time the system went down. So I went to, I said to these guys, look, I've flown out here. I am not leaving till this system works. And they said, you sure? And I'm saying, sure. Well, we're going to go to the officers' club for lunch. No kidding. Yeah. And they rounded up this guy to stay with me. And I remembered every time we came back from lunch, there was kind of like dirt on the things, because these were literal bunkers cut out of hills and rocks and stuff. And I thought, they keep this messy around here. I don't know why they do this. So this is in the days of analog clocks. So the clock comes up to 12. I guess on your side, clock comes up to 12. The guys have left. And this guy's standing there with a big smile on his face, leaning on the thing. And I'm like, I'm just working and working. All of a sudden, right at the stroke of noon, boom, this explosion. It's not like it's in the movies or on television. If you've ever been near a real explosion, you know that was an explosion. Boom! And I said, what is that? And he said, well, we have all our ammunition come in, all our ordnance come in from contractors, but we have to be ready in case the contractors, boom, coming down here, in case they don't perform, we have to be able to make it here. And so we blow it off between noon and 1 o'clock every day, which is why everybody goes to the officers' club. Boom! And I said, well, I can understand that, And he goes, in fact, you shouldn't ever be here, even with me and them or anything. And I'm saying, well, yeah. He goes, no, you don't understand. You're sitting on top of the nation's surplus of nitroglycerin. You never saw a system get fixed faster in your life. So if you are in technology and technology is around you, you are technology. Everything you think and do and build and construct and imagine and speak and write, then you will have an exciting life. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Moira. On behalf of all of our CEWiT members and affiliates, thank you so much for being with us today.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, we have 2 short pieces remaining. One is we have an announcement from the CEWiT student organization about a scholarship. And to make that announcement, and then we'll have a quick ribbon cutting. So, to make the announcement, I'd like to invite Liz De Silva to come out here. Please welcome Liz. She's a fourth-year PhD student in psychological and brain sciences. She concentrates in cognitive neuroscience, and her research explores how emotions and other social signals are nonverbally communicated and understood by the brain. She brings a passion for encouraging women's involvement in scientific research to CEWiT. She's currently the PhD co-chair for the organization, and she works closely with two student groups, the Affinity Group and the Research Group, and she really works to create opportunities for students to learn new technology skills and to share their work. So Liz, come on out.
As Maureen said, I'm Liz De Silva, and I'm here today representing CEWiT Student Alliance, CEWiT, which stands for Women Empowering Success in Technology. Our Student Alliance is comprised of undergraduate, master's, and PhD women who are making a stand to embrace women's continuing contribution to and participation in technology and computing-related fields. We accomplish this by empowering women of all levels and disciplines to pursue opportunities in technology and enhance their technical skills. Our alliance strives to create awareness that technological fields are fun, creative, and collaborative environments for women to be a part of. On behalf of the Student Alliance, I'm very pleased to announce that today, CEWiT will kick off our Aspirations in Computing Scholarship Competition for undergraduate women. These scholarships are made possible through the generous support of the IU Women's Philanthropy Council. Our scholarship competition will acknowledge the computing-related aspirations of undergraduate women at IU and generate visibility for women's participation in computing-related pursuits. Applicants will submit a 500-word essay that describes how they will use computing technology to make a difference in any career setting they choose. 10 women will be selected to receive a $1,000 award. Each will be asked to actively engage with the Student Alliance of CEWiT to promote involvement and success for women in technology on campus or in our outreach programs. Students, in order to apply for the scholarship, please visit the CEWiT website that is listed on the business card that you received with your programs. Faculty and staff, please encourage any qualified students to take advantage of this opportunity. Thank you.
Stay right there. Okay, last but not least, I'd like to invite Provost Robel back up here with Laurie, McRobbie, and the CEWiT staff, Jenny Hurdle, Julianne Martin, Megan McGrath, and myself. Beth Kate is going to represent the faculty leadership team, if she's here. And let's see, Megan May from the IU WIT staff. So, Provost Robel, you get to cut the ribbon.
Oh, well, it seemed somehow so last century to do a ribbon cutting for something like this particular effort. So we decided that we'd do a virtual ribbon cutting instead. So, do you mind turning it on and off?
Drum roll.
Woohoo!
Yay!
Congratulations, Center of Excellence for Women in Technology. You are officially launched.